Hello, John. You're on mute, John.
How's that?
Hello, mate. You all right?
Yes, fine. Am I seconding this? Yeah, okay, that's fine. I'll wait until they unmute me because they keep unmuting me at the moment.
All right. Yes. The same as well.
Okay. Look. What time is it on? Where is it on the agenda? First, second, third, or last?
So, welcome everyone to this Cabinet meeting for Torquay Council, our one for August. May I encourage colleagues, as I am just doing now, making sure that your phone is on silent or turned off. We are not expecting any fire tests, so for those in the room, if there are any bells going off, then please exit as directed and assemble opposite Tesco's to the rear of the Town Hall. This is a hybrid meeting. This enables officers and members to be able to join and participate virtually. For those who are joining and participating virtually, you have the who are either officers or members, you'll need to use the raise hand function. Colleagues, what I plan to do as well, it is quite a heavy agenda this evening, and if there does happen to be any, I will plan for a 7:30 break. If we are winning the battle of getting through the agenda, then we may push on without that break. But I'm planning to take that because it is quite a heavy agenda this evening. And I'll move on to apologies, Lisa.
Chairman, we have none.
Thank you. I'll now move on to minutes from our meeting, our last meeting. I'm happy that they're a true and accurate record and happy to move them. Councillor Cowell, are you happy to second?
Happy to second.
Great. So all those in favour, please show.
Unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. So, colleagues, thank you for that, colleagues. So, declarations of interest. Are there any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests that either elected members or officers may wish to share at this point?
Nobody's indicated.
Thank you. And so we then move on to communications from around the Cabinet table. Councillor Long, I'll come to you first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We have discussed on a number of occasions in previous meetings and in other forums about the need for a heritage trail in Torquay. I'm pleased to report that the South West Heritage Trust with Exeter University has developed their own heritage trail app. Just for Torquay at the moment, but we've got to start somewhere, and that is very good news indeed. The spark to develop this app was the development of the heritage strategy that Torquay has. I've recently just been sent the link. It's probably easier for me to circulate it to all members rather than try to read it out, but I'll circulate that to people for people to see. But it's good news that is under development. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor Law, do you have anything that you wish to share?
There we go. So the last couple of weeks have been a nerve-wracking time for our young people as they've received their examination results over the last couple of weeks. As you'll be aware, this is the first time that our children have sat formal exams and since 2019. And for those who've sat A-levels this year, it's important to remember that they didn't have the experience of sitting their GCSEs in 2020. So indeed, all our young people, including those who sat their GCSEs this year, their education has been impacted and disrupted by the pandemic. However, that said, our initial data shows that our young people have achieved results that are broadly in line with the results that they got in 2019, so the pre-pandemic levels. We've yet to get a detailed breakdown of the data on the results, but when we do, I'm sure that this will be something to be considered in more detail by our Children's Overview and Scrutiny Board. I'd like to take this opportunity to say a big well done to everyone who sat their exams this summer, whatever your results were. The last few years haven't been easy, and to those who are disappointed with their results, I would ask that you please talk to someone who can help you decide on your next steps. If you don't know who to talk to, please get in touch with your former school, or there's a lot of online forums that you can use, such as Cooth, if you're having difficulties with that sort of thing. So please do talk to someone, get in touch with someone. Thank you.
Thank you, Cordelia. So any other Cabinet colleagues may wish to raise any other issues at this stage, please, Lisa, if you can assist.
Nobody's indicated.
Thank you. I'll just raise one that I'll share with colleagues. It's something that we helped develop a letter as a local authority to be sent out by the Unitary Councils Network, which are smaller unitary authorities, that was issued on the 18th of August. This was sharing with government or championing with government from those unitary local authorities the capital pressure costs that we're facing as all across the country, we know that we have a very exciting programme of opportunities across the whole of Torquay, from where we've been successful in bidding for future high streets and town deal money and other opportunities that we've been able to lever extra money into the bay on. The challenge that we've got is that skyrocketing inflation that we've seen with the cost of buildings that have happened over the last 12 months, and now that money, it looks as if it is going to not go anywhere near as far as we anticipated in achieving these projects that need to regenerate our town centres and employment opportunities across the bay. So we've joined with other unitary network councils in writing to the government highlighting the needs for in the autumn budget for them to recognise these pressures through that budget. But of course government like to hear some practical opportunities, and the couple of practical opportunities that we highlighted through them was seeing if there was possibilities of reducing rates of interest that we're able to borrow at, which had been done previously in previous economic downturns, to be able to get some of these schemes over the line. And then the final one was looking at joint ventures with the private sector around trying to lever in private cash, particularly around those places such as coastal communities that can get left behind. So it's important that we campaign not only as a local authority but with fellow local authorities to highlight some of these challenges that we face across the board. That ends communication, so thank you colleagues for your contributions with those. And urgent items.
Chairman, we have none.
Thank you. We now move on to the first main item on our agenda, which is destination management for Torquay. We've been out consulting with that, and Councillor Long, you'll be able to brief us in respect of this, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and we've got Carl Wired in the room as well, should we need to speak to him as well. I'm happy to propose the destination management plan for 2022 to 2030. The current plan has ended, hence the need for a new one. The plan sets out the visions and objectives, markets for growth, destination development, management, delivery model and action plan to take the destination forward. It is aligned with the corporate and community plan, the Torquay story and the English Riviera UNESCO Global Geopark. For the first time, there is an aspiration for Torquay to be the premier tourist destination in the UK. 4 growth areas have been identified in the new plan: sun by the sea families, young actives, cultural explorers and business tourism and events. There are 4 key themes: food and drink, on and in the water, which is something after your own heart, Mr. Chairman, UNESCO Global Geopark and culture and events. And events we know are really crucial to driving tourist accommodation, for example. There are also 7 new destination management priorities. The first one is brilliant basics. These are the public services and open spaces, including beaches, parks, street cleaning, signs, toilets and car parks. This area has not surprisingly been highlighted by a number of people during the consultation, including Paignton's very own Matthew Clark. I just want to say that this administration absolutely gets the importance of investing in the Bay's infrastructure. Some crucial work has been done already, for example, the seafront lights, but we're also investing a huge amount into Swissco so that they have modern, efficient cleaning machines and ensuring that the town centres will be cleaned as well as just the seafronts. The ER Bid Company also did a customer survey last year of new visitors, and Torquay's car parks were one of the areas needing investment. And there hasn't been no significant investment in our car parks for many years, and we are planning to start that investment. The second priority is tourism accommodation and the need to make sure that our planning policies do not allow for a deterioration in our accommodation offer. The third priority is towns and connectivity, then sustainable tourism and the need to address climate change. Skills are also a priority, and this plan seeks to make Torquay an all-year-round resort, which will mean it can become an attractive career of choice for our young people. Research and insights, so ensuring that we monitor progress of the plan and keep up to date with changes in the industry. And finally, business tourism, rebuilding Torquay to be the place for regional and national conferences. Consultation and engagement has been important in bringing this plan about. Blue Sail Consulting was appointed in 2021 to bring forward the draft plan, and they were very good in bringing together stakeholders of the industry in Torquay and to bring forward ideas and proposals, including an event at the Livermead Cliff Hotel. There was a 6-week consultation which ran from May the 24th until the 5th of July. The consultation was highlighted to local businesses via the TDA and the English Riviera Business Improvement District Company. Residents were also asked to take part via social media, the council's e-newsletter and via the press. The draft plan came to Cabinet and to overview and scrutiny, and there have been changes to the plan as a result, which are highlighted in the report. To give one example, overview and scrutiny suggested that monitoring of actions was important and needed to be included, and now there's a formal annual review. 109 anonymous responses were made to the consultation. This may appear low, but when the tourism industry has been involved in drawing up the plan from the start, that would be expected. I also wanted to highlight the equality impacts, and I'm pleased to see the positive impacts for skills, people with disabilities, and for people who are from an ethnic minority. I'm happy to propose, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And I'll go to Councillor Cowell for the seconding, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second. As Councillor Long's highlighted, there's been a comprehensive engagement, particularly with the sector, which is very important. And I think in terms of the actual delivery, the fact that we've been repositioning Swissco following its transfer from Tor 2, we're now able to actually have much more direct influence, and Swissco are working hard with their colleagues to deliver the best outcomes possible for Torquay, and indeed we need to place on record our thanks to their team for what they do, not just in our tourist areas but around the bay in some very challenging circumstances. Clearly there needs to be investment in kit, and that has been happening. We've had 2 new street cleaning pieces of machinery, one of which is already on the streets, cleaning 10 years of muck and grime, and the second one is due imminently to help with that task of improving the infrastructure and fabric of our streets. Clearly, as a council, we've made our commitment to making Torquay the premier resort in the UK, as evidenced with some of the budget allocations we've made, as Councillor Long highlighted one of them in terms of improving the LED lighting in Paignton and Torquay so far, but also replacing many kilometres of old rusting iron railings with marine grade stainless steel, all of which adds to the image of our tourism offer. All the investment and all of the opportunities within the destination management plan aren't just solely for the benefit of tourists, because locals alike will benefit from that, whether it's a cleaner, brighter fabric of Torquay or some of the new facilities. And clearly the town centre regeneration projects that we're seeing, such as Station Square in Paignton, Torquay Road in Paignton, the proposals for Paignton and Preston seafronts, which have come on leaps and bounds and are receiving quite popular feedback. What this destination management plan needs to be is fleet of foot in order us to be able to respond to the challenges of the post-economic crisis that we're going to endure over the next 12 months to 2 years. So we will be in a much stronger position to be able to ensure that there be a strong recovery in the industry. Clearly the industry, and if anybody's been alive to it today, the pub industry is extremely concerned about massive increases in its overhead costs, and the offer that a tourism resort in terms of hospitality, whether it's hotels, pubs and restaurants, we need to make sure that the government are doing everything they can to protect those so that they are there the other side of what will be the impending recession. So I'm quite happy to second this, and I'm sure that there'll be universal support for it, given the fact it's been supported by the tourism sector itself. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Darren, for seconding this. And I would just like to highlight that, in my view, destination management, as has already been said, it's not about just for tourists. It's making sure that the place that we know and love, that is Torquay, is actually best for our local community, but also trying to make sure that it is somewhere where businesses from elsewhere want to actually come and relocate, particularly with our high-tech cluster, because that is so important that that is driven, and that is somewhere where people are able to be swimming in the sea or walking on Dartmoor come the evening, but do some really quality jobs. We have this significant challenge as a local authority where we've got £96 million of reductions compared to previous years, and we've started to make inroads into some of the challenges that we'd seen when Children's Services was sadly not managed as strongly as we've managed in our period of time here. So it is going in the right direction, as colleagues have alluded to. It is stormy waters ahead, but I think this gives us a clear route map for making sure that we get those shoulder seasons filled out and actually get that better quality feel of of how we can drive those visitor numbers and enhance the bay for tourists and visitors alike. I understand that Carl and Alan feel that we've covered enough of the bases, but they're there if we want to call a friend during the meeting. Cabinet members, any reflections from other cabinet members from around the table at this stage?
Councillor Stockman's indicated.
Do come in, Jackie.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to endorse what has already been said, really, because regardless of whether I'm a councillor or not, I'm a resident. And what I have noticed is, because of the decisions that we have been making, that we can see these, I hate to use it, but I'm going to, grass shoots, change won't occur overnight, but you can actually see differences. So one example is if you walk along Broadsands now, where there were all the horrible rusty railings leading down onto the beach, they are now really, really nice. I used both of them yesterday to actually pull myself up off the sand without the risk of cutting my hands, etc. The guy that's down there, the operative, is fantastic. All of the area around Elbury has been cleared. It's just looking so good. So for me, it's rewarding that some of the steps that we are taking are showing visible improvements. And I'm sure that if we focus on the positive, not the negative, that we will gradually see that even on diminishing budgets, which is the most important thing to think about, is the fact that we've got less money to do more. But we all recognise that Torquay is a beautiful place to come and visit, and we all want to see it looking as lovely as it possibly can, and because that encourages people to invest in this area. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jackie. So, Lisa, any other hands from around the table? Any cabinet members?
Nobody's indicated.
No, thank you. So I've got Councillor Barrand. Would you like to share?
Thank you, Chairman. And I see we've got some new equipment, and I think I've managed to get it switched on first time. So there you go. That's a good start. Chairman, thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'd like to start off by, first of all, thanking Councillor Long for his response over the weekend, the bank holiday weekend, in in start of what I'm going to be mentioning, so he won't be fully surprised about what I'm about to say. I read the document with great interest, and as you would imagine, with my ward of being Cockington with Chelston, Cockington is at the forefront of my thoughts. And reading through the document, I reflected on certain parts of it, which in particular mentioned the destination of a cultural importance, and I'm reliably informed that Cockington is mentioned in the Doomsday Book, so I think it qualifies on that case. In terms of being authentic, I think we'll all admit that the village is very authentic and still with its a lot of features, and it's obviously a cultural exploration place to go. So really my question is that will the council in this document, it talks a lot about the town centres, and I'm not trying to water those down in any way, shape or form, shall I say, but I'm just really fighting my corner to say that in these aspirations, and in particular the last one which talks about towns and connectivity, that is something that's been raised recently about the ability to get to Cockington. Although it's only a mile or two from the town centre, it's like a different world, as we all know who have been there. But really, it's a plea, can you give some reassurances that whilst we're talking about the town centres, etc., that you won't forget good old Cockington and try and help us to boost the trade there. So I know the traders have been particularly disturbed by that there hasn't been a pick-up as much as they would have expected in this bounce back with these recent summer vacations. That's my question. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I'll take a couple of questions from out of the table first. So, Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And clearly, we welcome the destination management plan and the consultation that's taken part. I don't want to appear negative. I want to appear being realistic. And I take on board what Councillor Long said about investment in car parks. But it is getting back to the basics. It's making sure that if you drove into the bay, a lot of visitors come here on day visits from Exeter, from Plymouth, from around Devon. Devon's got 600,000 people. If they look at this plan and they want to come to Torquay, what are their first reactions when they drive down? Take Goodrington car park. Went there over the weekend, over 800 cars in the Key West car park. Brilliant. But what did you see? You saw weeds, overgrown branches, rubbish bins overflowing. Those guys would have then gone to the beach. I agree the railings have been repaired, but their first impression was that, do they really care? Do they want our business? So it's not only the car parks like Victoria Square car park, it's also those ones that can take the large number and are basically near our resort areas. Like other members, cabinet members and other councillors, we must have had letters repeating what I've just said. Let's get the basics right before we can class ourselves as the premier resort. I sent one to you, Chairman, only over the weekend from a prominent person from Paignton. We've had others, and they're asking, why can't we do it? Because it's not rocket science. It's not costing a lot of money to clear up the weeds. You go up to Roundham, and you see the islands in the middle of the road. I don't know why weeds grow, but grass doesn't. But the weeds are growing. And it just looks bad for people who are going up there in a tourist area. There's not a lot of money to get it right, but it is the basics, the little things that people count on. Now, we've heard today, that we haven't got the money. Government cuts and everything else. Look, guys, you're not new in. This isn't a new administration. You've nearly got an election next year in May. You've had over 3 years to get the basics, to get the things right. So what I'm saying to you guys, look at the fundamentals at the same time as looking at the big picture, because that's what the visitors, that's what the businesses, as you say, Chairman, that get them to relocate, to come to Torquay. It's the first impressions that count, and at the moment, the first impressions are not good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. And my initial reflection is that we've got more than a decade of mess that we inherited from the previous Conservative-led administrations, but I'm sure Councillor Long will be able to share a little further than that.
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. And just to come back to Councillor Barron, first of all, we have had a delightful email exchange over the bank holiday, and what better way to spend the bank holiday than catching up on emails? But and I need to do a reply to the trader who initially wrote to you, Mr Chairman, in detail. But there are some, as you rightly say, there is connectivity in the plan, and there are some opportunities, particularly around marketing Cockington and making sure people know where it is and where they can get to Cockington from. Plus also issues around the bus and whether that could be made more 7 day a week, or having a separate weekend bus going there as well. So things are moving forward on that, so that's good. And there's going to be a visit organised which we can all do together, so that's good. And Councillor Lewis, you're absolutely right. We do absolutely need to get the basics right, and we absolutely recognise that. Just because we've been in power for 3 years doesn't make the £96 million that we've lost go away. That's still a fact. The fact that we're having to invest so much into Swissco it just is, that shouldn't have been, but it's just the fact that we have to put that investment in and catch up on the 10 years of lack of street cleaning in our town centres. But we are focused on that, so it's absolutely important. But that shouldn't mean that we don't try and attract the type of visitors who would go to New Zealand for their geopark to come to Torquay as well to see ours, because our geopark is just as good as theirs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Clearly, we have our eyes on the horizon where others are just looking down on the floor. Councillor David Thomas.
Thank you very much. So let's start with that horizon viewing. And Torquay wanting to be the premier resort in the UK. I think all councillors would aspire to their town, their village, to be the premier location in, of course, the UK, no problem. It also says council fit for the future. That's an aspiration, council fit for the future. But what we're talking about at the moment is council fit for the present. Councillor Jackie Stockman says, don't worry, don't concentrate on the bits that are wrong. Concentrate on the bits that are right. Focus on focus on the positives. Focus on the positives. I've got a whole host of emails here. People are asking about Watcombe Beach, Reigate Beach, Anstey's Cove, issues at Maidencombe, Goodrington Walkway down from the Cliff Road is delightful, but once you get on the promenade, the steps to the water are blocked off. I can't say to them, oh, don't worry about that, go to Broadsands, because it looks great at Broadsands. The fact that you can't get to Anstey's Cove, the fact that you can't get to Watcombe Beach, that's a negative, but don't worry about that. You can go to Broadsands. And I am absolutely inundated this weekend with emails and complaints of rubbish on our streets. And we copied yourself, Leader, into some of the emails. Your response was, I have instructed for this work to be done. Well, it came to this morning and that work still wasn't done, which meant those bins were still stinking across the whole of the bank holiday weekend. That is only one incident. I really think that the QR code on bins, I thought that was a great idea. I really did. Until I had the opportunity to use it myself. I was on the seafront in Paynton, and there was a bin that was overflowing. I thought, no problem. Scan the QR code, fill in the form. It asks for a photograph of the bin. No problem. Took a couple of photographs of the bin and the rubbish around it and thought, great, that'll be it, sorted. I was down there 2 hours later and it still wasn't resolved. Now, I don't know what kind of time that you expect to turn around on that, but one would have thought having the access to that information in the summer with operatives in the area, that kind of thing is there to encourage tourism and encourage our residents that if they see a bin that is overflowing, to report it, and then it would get picked up quicker than if it would ordinarily be on the just regular round when somebody comes round. The whole idea of it being there for it to get picked up, clearly that is an issue. And so although we do support the destination management plan, which is a long-term horizon viewing, as you say, it's about getting the basics right. It's about getting the issues now that our residents are contacting us about, and actually those clean streets, those bins that if they are full, why are they not getting emptied when QR codes are being sent in? What's the issue there? I don't know. But clearly, you know, as I say, unfortunately this weekend I have had a lot of emails on the cleanliness of the bay, and to be honest, I know I'm not the only councillor, and that is, you know, really, really important, because at the end of the day, once you've got the basics right, then you can apply some polish and polish something that is actually sorted. Let's not polish rubbish.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Thomas, you mentioned Reigate. Where is Reigate Beach that you mentioned?
My apologies, Redgate, sir.
All right. So, Councillor Morey, I'm sure you may want to give some reflections. I think you've raised to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, and it's something I'm perfectly clear about, that there is an absolute need to talk up Torquay, not as a couple of members of the public would like to do, is to talk down Torquay, or shall we say, talk down Torquay. Because obviously, if visitors read such negative effects, reports, then they're going to think twice about coming. And I think we should all be minded of that. We are committed to the starting of renovating the car parks, as been mentioned. That we are committed to do, but because they have been left to deteriorate for so many years, decades even, it's going to take a hell of a long time to even scratch the surface. But we're starting. And obviously, I'm not hearing the same as what Councillor Thomas and Councillor Lewis is saying, especially over the last 12 months or so. I'm hearing nothing but positive comments from the community about Swissco and its operations. Swissco has made such a difference in tackling that backlog and other backlogs because of that lack of investment. Surely this should be welcomed, recognised, as I think the public do. And to be honest, they're putting this council to shame if there's members here who are looking to denigrate the work that Swissco does. So I'll stop there because I'm twitching.
Thank you. And I would just reflect to myself, the comments from Councillor Thomas in respect of the stinking bins, which was in respect of a new business on Torquay Harbour side. I'm sure colleagues would have been copied into the email where clearly that new business owner was having problems with the collection of them, and officers are positively engaging with them and supporting them in trying to sort that resolution. It's a pity, it's clearly evident from the Conservatives' comments this afternoon that they are no friends of business because they are failing to support them if they have challenges and all there is criticism. So, Councillor Bye.
Shall I come to the table?
You're very
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want this afternoon to turn into a sort of mega Windsor-thon and everyone highlighting what's wrong. I guess the ambition should be to try and get the worst bits equivalent to the best bits. And I was interested in what Councillor Stockman had to say about Broadsands. I think that is quite an interesting point, in that Broadsands, you can't have anywhere lovelier than Broadsands and Elbury, and some of the parts of the bay are just absolutely delightful. It is the most stunning place, absolutely well deserving of our geopark status. But it's the central bits, it's the bits that the visitors come to first, and it is the bits that I suspect lots of visitors stick around and don't get as far as Cockington, Broadsands, Meadfoot. And it's trying to make, as I think I tried to explain when we looked at this overview scrutiny, and possibly even the very first Cabinet meeting when we looked at this draft plan, it is trying to bring all the things together that we have to make the place special, and absolutely now to try and improve the worst bits to bring them up to the good bits. So Councillor Pentney and I accepted the invitation of, I think I can name the lady, I mean she's not shy, Mrs. Susie Colley, to join her and walk around the harbour area and the lower town centre. And it was so in Torquay, and it was so interesting to see a place that I am familiar with through somebody else's eyes. And so much of the basic infrastructure in that area is sadly so very, very tired. And although we have these great plans to do things for the Strand, we know that's not going to happen overnight. I hope to live long enough that some of these regeneration plans will actually come to fruition. But there are basic, simple things that could be done now. So when we suggested an overview and scrutiny put in our recommendations, quick wins, concentrating on some quick wins, that's in the report now, and you've said quick wins identified. Surely quick wins to go on and score the goal. It's to go and do the thing. It's not to identify. So I'm absolutely delighted to hear from Councillor Long that there's now going to be an app. And I've got a new phone, so I'm getting there. Maybe I can sign up for this new app and we'll follow it with enthusiasm. But the basic things that we can do. So, for example, the other day I went to Exmouth on a visit on a train. And goodness me, that is a place where they must have had a plan and they've worked through a plan. They must have had the same issues in terms of money from government as we have. They may have actually had more or less money from government than we've had because we've skipped the jackpot on certain funds. But it is clean. The infrastructure like seating is all repaired. The flowers, the signs, and that is the key thing. You get to Torquay railway station and there is nothing there to direct you either to Tor Abbey or to Cockington, even though both Cockington and Tor Abbey are within very easy walking distance. So it's those quick wins. It's to improve the basics in the areas, the town centres, around the harbours, the station square in Paynton. Look forward to that happening. Improve the basics to get to the best within the bay and to try and sell the package so that the good bits, people actually get to them and explore them. To me, the plan is still a little bit complicated. There's themes, there's priorities, there's targets. It is quite a hard thing to follow. So I wish you well with this, but I do think it could be simplified, and I think quick wins are there to be achieved. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bye. Councillor Long.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to go back slightly to the previous discussions, because I think if Councillor
Long, I'll take this as you're summing up unless there are any hands suddenly raised, okay?
Okay, thank you. I'll just go back slightly to the previous conversation. I think if Councillor Thomas had followed Councillor Barron's example and contacted me over the weekend, I could have told him all about Watcombe Beach, which whilst it's in St Mary Church Ward, we do have a keen interest in it. And I could have told him about all the excellent work that Swissco are doing down there, along with Groundwork and various other organisations to sort out the problems caused by climate change down there and the causeway, the rivers running down there and messing up the steps. So I could have brought him up to speed with all the excellent work that's going on down there. So that might have been a useful update for the people who were emailing him. I just have to feel I ought to say that it might just be worth thinking about going back to 2019 when this administration was formed, when there were literally the seafront lights were literally coming off where they were hanging down and half the lights weren't working, and bring forward today when they are incredible, the lights, and we're able to do things like do the Ukrainian colours and pride colours and things like that with them. Just to give an excellent example of where we've come. And of course, Conservative colleagues voted against the budget that would have included that did the seafront lights for Paignton. So we have absolutely come a long way, and we are continuing with that, making sure that we get the basics right, as well as looking ahead to the future. And I will take in good humour the criticism from Councillor Bye that we've taken something on and included in the plan something from overview and scrutiny regarding the quick wins. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All those in favour, please show.
That's unanimous, Chairman. However, Councillor Brown has just indicated.
I'm sorry, Councillor Brown. It's a little bit late. I did call for hands earlier on, so apologies for that. We've got a heavy agenda, so please be quicker on the draw next time. So thank you. So we've got the next item is an amendment to our waste strategy. Councillor Morey, would you be kind enough to introduce this?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to, Chair. This report that's before you is really to tie up loose ends, or should I say, clear up any doubts that may exist. The report is purely to make it abundantly clear that the introduction of a 3-weekly collection residual waste collection has never been on the table since approval of the action plan. As reference to the 3-weekly, it was still alluded to in the strategy, therefore it became clear that the strategy required amending to mirror the approved action plan, and as such the consultation exercise was required. Just to recap, the Resource and Waste Management Strategy 2020 to 23 was approved by the Council in February 2021. Although the strategy includes a reference to undertaking a trial of the reduction of the frequency of residual waste collections, this was not included, as I said, in the action plan associated with the strategy. The Council and Swissco are working hard to increase recycling rates, thereby reducing the amount of residual waste that households generate. However, it is felt that the ongoing inclusion of the potential for this trial could cause distraction from the important work to improve the levels of household recycling in the Bay. As I said, the Resources and Waste Management Strategy forms part of the Council's policy framework, and therefore the Constitution requires any changes needed to be subject to consultation. And that consultation of the proposed change to the strategy took place between the 24th of July and the 21st of August. Therefore, Chair, as it's purely a technical issue, therefore, Chair, I remove the recommendations that appear on pages 2 and 3 of that report.
Thank you. I will be from the chair seconding this report. I would suggest that we have been on a journey around our recycling world. I think that we were once upon a time giving serious consideration to 3-weekly bin collections, and it got very close. We did have something intervening called the pandemic as well, which made us reflect to ourselves, actually, we ought to put hold on this until we've got a clear way forward. And we did that, and it was right as an administration to do that at the time, because clearly there are many other ways forward for us to drive those recycling figures up. We've driven this through education by employing people who go out and encourage recycling. We have the Right Stuff, Right Box initiative that is again driving up the recycling figures, and officers advise us that that is having a significant impact in the levels of recycling. And also we have it in train as far as green waste collection, perhaps not as fast as members may have liked, but the challenge that we faced is that the majority or a significant proportion of this administration has been plagued by a pandemic, and that has actually impacted on our abilities. Many local authorities were challenged around recruiting HGV drivers during this, whether it's a Brexit issue or whether it's the pandemic. It still impacted on us as well as others. And I reflect to myself that I think that this is probably the first summer as a local authority where we haven't had to start to do some commingled waste collection from those people who take the trouble to recycle, because we have a greater fix on our collections from our people who participate in recycling. So we are in a much stronger position. The challenge that we face, and this is why we as a Cabinet were keen to achieve this, was we do have some colleagues who take a Trumpian approach around the way that you don't let facts get in the way of a political argument. So we were keen to take this out of any form of debate by removing it, because clearly we do have other opportunities, other fish to cook, of actually achieving the recycling rates that we all want to drive forward with. So I would hope that colleagues would be backing this recommendation at Cabinet tonight. Any other Cabinet colleagues who may wish to comment at this stage?
Councillor Long?
Please do come in, Councillor Long.
Thank you very much. Just to say that it's just interesting that the waste strategy originally, I want to give two examples. It did include 3 weekly collections, but it also included green waste collections. In the consultation, residents were not enthusiastic about 3 weekly, but they were very enthusiastic about green waste collection. And as an administration that likes to listen, not only are we not doing the 3 weekly, but we had twigged also that there are other things that we could be doing to drive up recycling, but we are doing the green waste collection. So I think that's just a very good example of the council listening to its residents on this very matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa, any other hands from around the room, please?
Chairman, you have Councillor Thomas.
Thank you very much indeed. Anyone would think that there was an election on the horizon. So Councillor Morey presented this as a clearing up of loose ends. I think that the press would often refer to that clearing up of these loose ends as a U-turn. He also called it a technical issue. Okay, so if this is a clearing up of loose ends and a technical issue, why does the leader of the council at 6:14 this evening say that, and the reason I mention the time is it's easier for us to go back and look at the tape. So at 6:14 this evening, he says effectively, this allows us to put this on hold. He previously, before that, he said, we were seriously giving the 3 weekly collection consideration. And that is a direct quote. He goes on to say then, we are putting it on hold. So if you're to read the report is somewhat vague. It talks about the words to support any changes of the frequency of residual waste collections.
Councillor Thomas, sorry, I misspoke. I meant to say bin. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't hear you, sir. You meant what, sorry?
I meant bin. Thank you. Do you have anything else to say, Councillor Thomas?
Sorry, I will go back. Sorry, I've clearly misunderstood what your comment was, and I apologise for that. So, what I was saying, Section 1B, the words to support any changes of the frequency of residual waste collection be deleted from the start of the 7th paragraph. And it goes on to tell you which words are going to be deleted. However, basically, it's very simple, and we do support it, that the 3 weekly bin collection is being removed from the strategy. So 3.5 years after saying it's not the right thing to do, I am delighted this evening that the administration is finally listening to what we have been saying for 3.5 years. So I guess if you say it long enough and you keep on banging the drum, you do eventually get... well, what I was hoping this evening was an absolute determination that the 3 weekly bin collection was out of the window. However, as we heard at 6:14, it is being put on hold. Thank you.
Councillor Thomas, I misspoke. I've told you this again. You're playing as if you're Donald Trump. This, it is clear that from the Councillor Thomas, I would ask you not, please. Councillor Thomas, it is clear, and you can play your political games as much as you like, but we know that there is more than enough as an administration to drive recycling up without going anywhere near 3 weekly bin collections, and that's why we're removing this. You can play your games if you wish to, but we know what the reality is. Thank you, Councillor Thomas. So, any other hands, please, Lisa?
Councillor Brown?
Councillor Brown?
Yes, Mr Chairman, I would like to ask how many...
Councillor
Brown, you'll need to come forward to the microphone, please. Yes. Mr Chairman, I would like to ask how many, not bins, but I want to know how many machines have you got to clean Paynton, Torquay and also Brixham? Is it 2 machines or just 1?
Thank you. Although we're slightly off a tangent, this is about 3 weekly bin collection. I'll briefly indulge you and say that we've spent £250,000 on 3 different bits of kit. Actually, 3 different elements of kit. One is an electric vacuum, 2 of those at £17,000, 2 Haycos at £85,000, 1 remains at the factory because it's still waiting some chips to be fitted to it before it's exported to us from Germany, and the third item that we've invested in that £250,000 is a hot wash that previously, when it was Torquay, they'd failed to repair, and we've invested £30,000 with that. But that's a tangent. Is there anything in respect of 3 weekly bin collections, please, Councillor Brown?
No, I was just asking why, the streets are so dirty in Torquay, and I wondered, when are they going to be cleaned up? That's all, and that's why I was asking you how many machines you've got to clean them.
I would suggest, Councillor Brown, that there's a briefing late tomorrow afternoon. I think it's 5 till 6, I could be wrong, where Swissco will be advising all members around that. But I would suggest that this summer, the plans are that we've been concentrating our efforts on those high footfall areas, and officers are working on plans for all of the 3 main town centres and subsidiary areas for those kit to be put to use, because the challenge we face is that under the previous contract that was signed off under a previous administration, grime has been allowed to become embedded in our streets, and you can't just do a simple wash. It needs some really deep quality washing. But we're going off at a tangent now. So any other hands, please, Lisa?
Okay, thank you.
Nobody's indicated, Chair.
Okay, so it's been...
Unanimous, Chair.
We move on to the racism review. I'm going to go to the proposer and seconder around this very swiftly, and then I will move on to Councillor Atayala and also Councillor John Thomas, who were members of the panel as I was, but I'd sooner give way to them for them to reflect their comments of the key recommendations. So then I'll come back to myself and Councillor Cowell for any further comments from there, and then we'll open it up around the table and within the room. So, Councillor, so I'm formally proposing the recommendations for the race review, and we'll pick up on this further in the meeting. Councillor Cowell?
Yes, happy to second, and I've just noticed, Chair, that Councillor John Thomas seems to have dropped off the link.
Right. Hopefully colleagues might be able to see if we can reconnect him, whether there's a phone call to be made or whatever. But Councillor Atayala, as chair of this report, this board, please do come in and share the key findings. Thank you.
Right, here we go. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Darling. I would like to thank the Cabinet for giving the race review panel the time and the space to conduct this. This review was started off in in December of 2020 after the unlawful killings of George Floyd. It brought back 30 years of, if you like, social injustice to the BME community. I'm going to use the word BME because that is the official terminology that the government recommended we use in 2021. So basically, the 5 recommendations are as follows, Mr. Chairman. So I'm using a secondary gadget, so just give me a couple of minutes and I'll be up and running. Right, okay. So the 5 recommendations are that the Cabinet, as a matter of urgency, appoint a dedicated full-time Equality and Diversity Officer for Torquay Council to develop and implement an action plan that addresses all the key findings detailed in this report. The action plan will include actions relating to both those specifically for Torquay Council, as well as joint actions for the Torquay's public sector organisations, but will not include those directed specifically to Devon and Cornwall Police, who, by the way, just to make you aware, Mr. Chairman, they will be issuing their response after this meeting or in the next 24 hours. Recommendation 2 is that the Cabinet requests that Torquay's public sector organisations recognise the key findings and commit to working with each other to develop the joint actions outlined in the action plan referenced at recommendation 1 above. Joint actions should be coupled with measurable outcomes, time commitment and strategy on how to deliver. The final 2 points are as follows, Mr. Chairman. That the Cabinet requests that Devon and Cornwall Police recognises the key findings related to them in this report and commit to address them as a matter of urgency. Actions need to be addressed with measurable goals with a time commitment. Point 4, the Cabinet request as part of the action plan reference at the recommendation 1 above, that as a matter of urgency, Torquay's public sector organisations work together to improve the collection and analysis of data on ethnic minority staff, their ethnic minority customer base, and community to ensure that is accurate, because that's something that we are clearly lacking. Bear with me one moment. Yeah, so make sure that is up to date, and so they can also improve the services that they offer. Point 5 is that the Cabinet requests that the above recommendations be reviewed by us, the Torquay Racism Review Panel, every 6 months to monitor progress on their delivery, transparency in response to recommendations alongside all progress, challenges, and any difficulties, that may crop up. I would like to say once again, thank you for allowing us to do this. It's a historic piece of work that's been done in Torquay. Quick wins have been from us. We've got the Torquay Torquay Multicultural Network up and running. That's going from strength to strength at the moment. And we also now got the Torquay Inclusive Network. That's just starting its development. So I look back where we were 18, 24 months ago, there is absolutely nothing in place. And I do feel the building blocks, you know, from this panel and also working alongside this administration, that we are putting positive culture into our bay and into our public sector organisations. Thank you.
For that. Do we have Councillor John Thomas with us yet? I know he dropped out, and is he in the waiting room, or is he yet to be with us?
He hasn't quite yet managed to reconnect, Chairman.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to ask Lisa to share our response to the recommendations, and then hopefully John may have joined us by then, and then we'll open it up for further debate. So Lisa, would you be kind enough to share, unless he's popped into the waiting room since? Yep. So if you can fully share those for clarity, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Attiah has set out the recommendation, so I shall just read out your response. So, in response to recommendation 1, Cabinet support the principle of this, but as there are budgetary implications, this will need to be considered as part of the budget setting process for 23-24. In the meantime, the Chief Executive is requested to identify a resource that will be able to progress the development of an action plan. Any consideration of a post will include the possibility of a shared post with health colleagues. In response to recommendation 2, that Cabinet requests that in response to recommendation 2, Cabinet supports this recommendation in conjunction with the development of the action plan as set out in the response to recommendation 1. In response to recommendation 3, the police have agreed that once the document has been considered by Cabinet, they will review and provide appropriate feedback based on the recommendation. Cabinet's response to recommendation 4. Cabinet supports this recommendation in conjunction with the development of the action plan as set out in response to recommendation 1. And finally, Cabinet's response to recommendation 5 is Cabinet supports a review of the implementation of the recommendations by the panel in 6 months' time. And Councillor Thomas has rejoined us.
Excellent. And before I call in Councillor John Thomas for his reflections, I think probably a couple of months ago when we were drawing together with Mark Hammett, the key recommendations, I think I was optimistic that we would be able to, in year, find monies in respect of the Equalities and Diversity Officer. I think since then, the economy nationally has taken a significant turn for the worse. Clearly, normally you would expect mood music from the government as far as what we should expect as local government. As there's been a Conservative election for the leader of the party, that's resulted into a policy vacuum nationally, and so as a local authority we are preparing for a very, very harsh winter in light of lots of the pressures that are on us. So I would have hoped that we would be in a better position, but we are having to face harsh realities, both with this and many other spending decisions that are coming down the line for us in this current year. Councillor John Thomas, I'm pleased that you're able to join us again. You were a valued member of the panel. I know that I found being a member of the panel extremely useful, and some of the debates and the conversations we were able to have with groups from across Torquay, across Devon, and hearing from some of those key players throughout the community was really life enriching, and I'd welcome your comments, please, Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me, Chairman?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. First of all, Chairman, please accept my apologies. Technology is technology, and I got cut off. Firstly, I would like to thank the Chairman of the panel, Jermaine, and all of the members who were on the panel, and indeed the public, for being so engaged in this very worthy review. I certainly consider it a privilege that I was elected as Vice Chair of the panel. And members, I'd just like to go a little bit of the background, which I mentioned when the panel first started up. Members will be aware that I'm married to a black Jamaican lady, and that I'm deeply embedded into a Caribbean family. I believe that I can fairly and demonstrably claim to have a deep and intimate experience of racism towards sectors of society who are not of Anglo-Saxon origin. It may seem bizarre, Chairman, but as a person of white British-born Anglo-Saxon origin, who is deeply embedded in an extended black Jamaican family, I have, together with my Jamaican wife, first-hand and sadly deeply personal experience in Torquay of racism. As but one example, I recall walking along Paynton Promenade hand in hand with my wife when a gentleman who was obviously a tourist visiting Torquay was clearly heard to use expletive and obscene languages against me being married to a black lady. And he used the term, I can't understand why a white man can marry an N. I use the N word. The members will also be aware that in April of last year, my wife and I, together with our extended black family, experienced a racial tragedy that will live with us forever. My black nephew was murdered and stabbed to death. He was a court bailiff doing his job when he was murdered. On the 8th of April 2021, he was delivering a court eviction order to a tenant of a rented flat. The tenant came to the door of the flat, pulled out a knife and stabbed my black nephew to death. The perpetrator was heard to say, and I quote again, well, that's one less N that we've got to worry about in the future. Chairman, racism does exist. It's thankfully in Torquay. It isn't as great as it is elsewhere, but it still does exist. I thank the panel for all of the work they undertook. We had from all sections of society, police included, and I trust that the members of the Cabinet will see from my brief overview that I consider my quest to add to the quality of the debate as a privilege. However, Chairman, taking your comments on a few minutes ago, I understand exactly where we are economically, but my biggest fear is, and it remains my biggest fear, is that this report is before you will receive warm comments and good intentions will certainly be expressed by well-meaning members, but my big fear is, and it's worsened, increased as a result of what you've quite rightly said, Chairman, my fear is that the report can get kicked into the long grass and lie forgotten somewhere in a filing cabinet in the town hall. Many people of a good-minded nature have been giving witness, and my strong recommendation, despite the fact that we've got terrible economic situations facing us, is that we do all we can to have an officer whose sole job is to get the eradication of racism in Torquay. Again, gentlemen, I say that it was an absolutely superb series of meetings, very positive, very constructive, and I think that Jermaine should be thanked and congratulated for the way he chaired it. That's all I have to say, Chairman. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. And you're right, Councillor Thomas, to highlight the qualitative and energetic way that Jermaine has conducted this review. So thank you so much for that, and thank you for your extremely sobering comments of the impact of racism on your extended family, and our thoughts are with those who have been impacted with that. I'm aware that we've got Mark Hammett with us. I'm not sure if he's virtually or physically with us, but does he wish to come in at this stage at all with any further commentary?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm here virtually, but no, I think I wouldn't really add much more to what Councillor Thomas and Councillor Atiala have already sort of outlined, really. I think, you know, we tried to really give a broad sort of overview for what is quite a tricky subject, and I think we've made some very powerful and sort of far-reaching recommendations. And I think that the ball is in the court now for the council and other organisations in Torquay to pick up that mantle and make sure, as Councillor Thomas just said, that this isn't one for the cupboard and the shelf. This is one that we pick up and run with, because there's an awful lot of expectation out in the community about this piece of work. So I think I'll just leave it at that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Colleagues, are there any comments from around the Cabinet table? Councillor Cowell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And there's not a lot you can add after the testimony there from Councillor John Thomas, which was extremely powerful and very sobering. I think it does emphasise the importance of this review and the recommendations contained within it. and it's probably the start of a journey, and certainly it's not one that I, or I believe any of my cabinet colleagues, would want to see tucked away in a filing cabinet like so many strategies and reviews have been in the past. So we will do everything we can to find those resources, whether it's ultimately identifying the funding to support the named officer as recommended. That would be our preferred option, but given the constraints of the budget and the in-year pressures that are emerging, it will be a challenge. But I think I'd like to give that assurance on behalf of the administration that we have no intention of kicking it down the road. It's something that we need to be alive to, and we cannot afford to be complacent. Otherwise, there will be more of Councillor John Thomas's nephews, and we don't want that in Torquay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Long, Councillor Law, and then Councillor Morey in that order, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I just wanted to say that Councillor Atia Allah kindly invited me to one of the first meetings of the Diversity Business Incubator recently, and which is a networking event, and there was a real buzz around the room, and I think lots of confidence building amongst the participants there to be able to be meeting together and networking amongst each other, and knowing that the council and other agencies were receptive and keen to support. Interestingly, I was at a meeting this morning to talk about having a Torquay Pride in Torquay, and the person I was speaking to mentioned that they were going to be speaking to the equality officer from the police, and I also think there might be an equality officer as part of the Torquay Community Development Trust, potentially. So I'm just wondering if we, because of all the challenges, whether we are able to extend those conversations wider, just to see if we can perhaps come together with more organisations to try and bring that officer into being, even if it's a shared post, just to make sure, because it's not in our instincts to put this on the shelf at all, quite the contrary. So lots of positive things going on, and I just wanted to finally say that it was good to see Mark Hammett's cat joining us very, very briefly, virtually. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Law.
Thank you, Chair. And also thank you to John for sharing what was a very deeply traumatic and personal experience. And also thank you to John for the support and comradeship that he's shown to me throughout that review, when there were things that were very close to my heart that were raised. You only have to look at Torquay Council's own social media pages and accounts when the racism review was being publicised to see why this review was really, really needed. There's so much we could say. This is a massive topic for Torquay. It's highly denied, and you've got three councillors here, Councillor Atiya Allah, Councillor John Thomas, and myself, that will speak out and say we have experienced racism in Torquay. Many people don't know that I wasn't actually born in Britain. I wasn't born in England. Many of my family are Muslim, and that has led to a lot of intimidation within our communities. For me, when people accuse me of actually betraying them somehow, when for some reason I'm not Arab enough for them. I'm not quite sure how I'm supposed to be a bit more Arab for them, but there you go. One thing I do want to say, I mean, with the leadership, around the leadership and management, sorry, that's coming later, but around the diversity officer, is that later on the agenda tonight is a training module for our senior management and our senior leadership team. And one of the modules that they will be doing within that course is about equality and diversity. And just very lastly, I'd like to say that I am very proud of Torquay Council for the diversity and the equality that exists within Torquay Council. I think we are actually one of the most diverse cabinets in the country. And we've got two from Brixham. I mean, that says a lot, you know. We might have to do our own individual review for them. But thank you so much. I've grown up in this town. I've listened to a lot in this town. I've experienced a lot. and this review means a lot to me. And I hope that we can make more inroads. So thank you for it. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Mike Morey, then Councillor Dave Thomas. So, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, like others, I've listened intently to what John and Jermaine have said, and they can obviously put over the case much better than I can. However, and it's been a long-standing issue with me, that discrimination of any description must be stamped out, full stop. There is no reason or no excuse to pussyfoot around and by trying to excuse what may have been said or what actions may have taken place. That is just playing the game, which will not help the situation. If we turn a blind eye or do nothing, we are in fact allowing discrimination to take place and indeed to increase. As I've said it before, I can't remember where it was, this country has benefited greatly from a multicultural society, but those of minority cultures will explain much better than I how difficult it has been to be accepted. And I'm looking at you two in particular now. John is absolutely right. This document, this piece of work, not a document, sorry, it is a piece of work, should not be stuck on a shelf gathering dust. It should be an ongoing working piece of work, if that makes sense. I'll shut up, but I fully support the report, obviously.
Right, Councillor David Thomas, and I'll just ask for any other hands as we'll be moving on because we've still got quite a heavy agenda left. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. You were just, or at least Councillor Long was earlier, identifying potential resources that may be able to help out. Obviously, Devon and Somerset have a dedicated officer that may be able to point in the right direction or help with various bits and pieces. I just thought it was worth adding to the list. That was all. Thank you.
No other hands then, Lisa? No. So, colleagues, thank you. It's been... I would just reflect before we go to the vote. As colleagues have alluded to, we have Cabinet members who have Greek heritage, Kuwaiti heritage, a gay member, a registered blind member of the Cabinet, as well as even people from Brixham, has been said. And the reality is, you know, this will not sit on a shelf. Equality issues are important to us. A key element of that is race. We do face challenges, and it's been very helpful. And Lisa, if you're in the recommendations, rather than just talking about the NHS, if we're able to talk about Devon and Somerset Fire and Rescue, the police, and also the CDT as other lines of inquiry, that would be very helpful. But I'm sure that we will ensure as a Cabinet that we are discussing the business of the officers as far as the next steps on this journey for us to drive that forward within existing resources with a view to looking at this as part of our emerging budget next year. So all those in favour, please show.
Unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you, colleagues. So we now move on to the annual foster carers reports. Councillor Cordelia Law.
Thank you, Chair. So it's a statutory requirement to publish and produce a fostering annual report, and before you is ours for the year 2021 to March 2022. This report is a very important document for us as councillors because each and every single one of us are corporate parents, and our fostering service is the primary way by which our parenting duties are met. Therefore, every councillor should read and familiarise themselves with this report, which together with our fostering statement of purpose gives an informed view of our fostering service. So the report sets out the roles and functions of the service as well as improvements that have been made in terms of performance, participation, fostering recruitment and the implementation of a restorative model that incorporates our fostering family too. So we currently have 301 cared for children, which includes 8 unaccompanied asylum-seeking children who are with us as part of the National Transfer Scheme. 96 of our children live more than 20 miles away from their address at the point of being cared for, and 22 of our children are in a residential setting, with 4 of these young people due to return to their families or step down to a foster family in the near future. The report sets out in detail the age profile of our cared for children, as well as the various arrangements by which they are cared for. So you'll also see on pages 19 and 20 that there are 2 major risks that are impacting our fostering family as well as our recruitment at the moment. The first has been the significant impact on our fostering community of the pandemic, and this is something that's been experienced and fed back nationally, that many foster carers are older and some have underlying health conditions or vulnerabilities within their own families that have caused them to reevaluate their ability to foster. So that is due in part to there was a need to continue face-to-face family time for our children throughout the pandemic, and that's been raised by several prospective carers as a potential issue. The second and more worrying factor coming to the fore is fear over the current cost of living crisis and uncertainty about people's future. Some prospective carers are reconsidering whether now is the right time to pursue their ambition to foster, and as there is never a guarantee of a full-time placement, child being placed with you full-time, many are seeking more consistent forms of employment for the time being. So in all, during 21 to 22, 13 mainstream foster care families were deregistered for the reasons that are set out for you on page 21 of the report, and 9 new foster carers joined us. So this was just one short of our recruitment target, which was 10 or is 10 new fostering families per year. I have to say that compared to where we were when I first came into post in 2019, the feedback I was hearing from foster carers was a world away from the comments and feedback that you can read within this report. We still have things that we want to do, things that we want to improve, and we'll continue to do and develop this service, but we'll do that with a continued input and feedback and together with our foster carers. Our fostering service, our foster carers are the backbone of our ability to be good corporate parents, and our foster carers need to feel supported and know just how much we value what they do for our children. So I'd like to take this opportunity, if I may, to put on record our gratitude to all our fostering families for the wonderful life-changing care that they give to our children on our behalf. And I'd like to ask Cabinet that the fostering annual report for 21 to 22 be endorsed and published as set out at Appendix 1. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor Jackie Stockman, I understand you may wish to second.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second this endorsement of the Fostering Annual Report 21-22 in order that it may be published. Having read the report, I believe it to be a comprehensive and overall positive report of fostering in Torquay. It clearly demonstrates a desire to be real collaboration between fostering services and foster carers and their families. I particularly like the fact that when applications are made to foster, that the stage 1 and stage 2 of the applications are run concurrently in order to reduce the waiting time, as this can be a stressful time for all concerned. It's good to see that there is ongoing support and the opportunity for foster carers to have training to help them with a child placed with them who may have special needs. There is support through CAMS, which is Torquay Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service, for those who might need some help with emotional and mental well-being, although, of course, some of those won't meet the threshold for this help, but I know that there is plenty of work going on around this area to make sure that those that would miss that threshold will be picked up. On page 175, the feedback is particularly encouraging as it demonstrates our foster care services' desire to respond to constructive criticism from foster carers in a positive and proactive manner. The wording used is clear, i.e., we have and we are. So we have done it and we are doing it. The Bright Spots survey is a great read and shows that the vast majority of our children feel that they are safe, they have mutual trust between them and their families, and I like this bit, they liked their bedrooms. Torquay Foster Care Services' aim is to provide the best possible care for children, and there are rigorous and comprehensive quality assurance frameworks in place. More details of this can be found on page 179. Torquay Fostering Services has its own fostering family charter, which further demonstrates its commitment locally to inclusivity and ongoing dedication to the carers and the cared for. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We've got Becky Thompson, who's just joined us at the table. Are there any reflections that you may wish to share, Becky, before we open up debate for Cabinet and other colleagues?
Thank you, Chair. I think just to echo both Councillor Law and Councillor Stockman's reflections on the value of our fostering cohort, especially during the last year, and really to thank them for the exceptional care that they provide for some of our most vulnerable children. So thank you.
Thank you. It's so important that we as a council value foster families. As I think Councillor Law alluded to them being the backbone of children's services, and at the beginning of our administration I was really pleased that we held about 4 events where we invited foster families in for tea and cakes to the town hall for members to hear that grassroots engagement and hear from them about what challenges they felt. That was very early on in the journey. I'm really pleased that this spring Cordelia, Nancy, myself and Anne-Marie were able to participate in a foster carers morning where we listened to that grassroots feedback again from them as far as what they felt we could do around improving the foster care service. So it's so important that we as a council are hearing from those foster families, and equally those foster families know that we value them by those members from perhaps the top table truly listening and wanting to positively engage with them. So I think this report is testament to that, and we are in a lot better position than many other local authorities. Do we have any hands from Cabinet colleagues? First of all,
Councillor Long.
Do come in, Councillor Long.
I just wanted to say, I know we've said it before, but it's probably worth saying every time it comes to a meeting like this for the viewer who's watching, that anyone can be a foster carer. It doesn't matter whether you're working or not, or you can be single or in a couple. You can be, it doesn't matter what your sexuality is. Anybody can be a foster carer. So if it's something that's crossing people's minds, they should inquire. Thank you.
Thank you. So, any other hands from around the room?
Councillor Bye.
Councillor Nick Bye, please to come in. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, and very well done. It's a positive report, and I think all credit where it's due. Your administration and professional colleagues have really raised the profile of fostering and given excellent support to our foster carers. So very well done indeed, and that's recognised in the Ofsted report earlier in the year with praise for our role as corporate parents. What I would like just to tease out, however, is in the item 6, the fostering recruitment performance, that in 2021-2022 there were 99 inquiries of potential fostering families, or foster carers, get the right terminology. Of those 99 inquiries, there were just 9 approvals. Although you say that's just one short of the target, it is actually just a 9% conversion rate. In the previous year, 111 inquiries came forward. There were 20 approvals, so that's one of the best years we've had, and that was an 18% conversion rate. In the explanation in the report, which I've read carefully, it reads to me much more like an explanation as to why foster carers are leaving the fostering service. due to ill health and their age and family circumstances, it isn't really an explanation as to why the approval level seems to be so low. So is it possible, please, to have further explanation on that subject? And I guess the supplementary, isn't it? What can we do? What can we all do to try and boost not just the number of inquiries, but the number of approvals and therefore successful potential foster carer placements?
Thank you, Councillor Byatt. I'll go to Councillor Mills first, and then we'll go to Councillor Law for her reflections on the two elements that may have been put there, and I'm sure Becky's there to support as well. So, Councillor Mills, please do join us and share.
Thank you very much. I also am delighted with the report, but I've also got several things I wanted to tease out as well. It mentioned that there was an out of our edge of care team which was complementing the work of the internal team, but they finished in March this year, and the internal team are just going to take over this function. Does that mean they're not needed, or is there a funding issue? Why don't we need them, or don't we need them, if that makes sense? My next question was Home for Good. We're in year 2 of a 3-year agreement. Do we have any statistics about how successful this has been over the last few years? And the third thing, there was an agreement with Family Action until June 2022. Did the Special Guardians make use of this, and will it be continued? So that's just the 3 questions I was hoping could be teased out.
Great. Thank you, Judith. Councillor Law.
So, thank you for those questions both. I'll start with Councillor Bye. The national average for conversion rate is 10%, so we're 1% off what that conversion rate should be. Our conversion rate last year was absolutely amazing, and I would love to be able to repeat that every year, so I don't know how you did it, but keep doing that. So the national average rate of conversion from inquiries to actually foster care is around about 10%. What can we do to improve? I will put that over to these ladies. We're constantly trying to improve, and you know yourself that we'll do anything that's suggested if it's working, if it does work. But one of the things we can do is exactly what Councillor Long just did then, which is plug for our foster carers at every opportunity whenever we come across people, which I know, Councillor Bye, that you are a very good advocate already for our foster carers and the service. I will have to defer to Becky for the out of hours thing. I would say that this is a report that deals with up till March 2022. So some of the questions that you ask actually tackle different issues than to do with this report. So I think it may be good to get back to you in writing on some of those, but I will defer to Becky, who may be able to help on those points. Thank you.
So if I start with Sorry, Chair. In terms of fostering recruitment, it is an ongoing challenge, and I recognise in the report some of those challenges. What I would say is at the point of the 31st of March 2022, whilst we had 9 approved families, we also had 12 Form Fs in assessment at that point, so pending approvals. Because the assessment process, quite rightly, is often around the 6-month mark, sometimes we can just miss that financial year window. What I would also say to that is some of the reasons for resignations in terms of foster carers are also the reasons that people are not confident in putting that initial inquiry through at this point. We are overcoming that, so we've introduced a keeping connected process at the point of initial inquiry, some enhanced work with our prospective carers at that point so that they are able to make an informed decision about whether or not the fostering journey is right for them at a much earlier stage. So we're streamlining that process and ensuring that we're focusing on assessing those prospective carers who have a maximised opportunity for approval at the end of that process. We've also enhanced our events this year, and we've been able to use the information jointly between the fostering service and communications in the year 2020 to 2021 to really streamline our marketing activity. So looking at the type of marketing activity that generates the most initial inquiries. So that will be included in the pending fostering recruitment 3-year strategy. In respect of the Edge of Care service, the out-of-hours service reference was implemented as part of our summer strategy, so recognising the impact of the pandemic and the increased visitor numbers and the impact of that on our emergency duty service. What we have done is we have now transitioned that to our internal services. So we use that out-of-hours team to really learn about what worked in terms of out-of-hours support for our foster carers, and our internal team have now taken that over. So it's not a case of that team ending, it's transitioned to our internal Building Futures Together team, which is the name that children and families have chosen to call our Edge of Care provision. In respect of Home for Good, we've just entered into year 2. In year 1, Home for Good focused primarily on raising the fostering profile within our faith communities. So there isn't normally an expectation that they would generate initial inquiries within that year, but simply raise awareness of what fostering means for a family. There was a number of events within the faith communities which the fostering service attended with Home for Good. So we should start to see the impact of their marketing, targeted marketing activity at the end of year 2. And lastly, in terms of Family for Action, our special guardians did make use of that. We've continued the use of that service. So that includes some online mentoring, peer mentoring, and some work around counselling for special guardians who might find the challenges of that family placement more difficult than others. So we're continuing that currently, and we're pending some statistics from Family Action so we can feed that into analysis of the improvements needed within the special guardianship support service.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Councillor Lewis, can you put your microphone on, please?
So used to doing Zoom. Thank you, Chair. Start again. Can you please advise us if we are losing or gaining foster families from the private sector? It used to be an issue when I had the portfolio that we struggled to compete with rates, and I think we tried to put up the benefits and the rates and things so that we did compete with the private sector. What is the situation currently? Thank you.
Are you when you're referring to the private sector, do you mean IFAs?
Yeah.
Thank you. Now we've got that clarity. Councillor Laura, can you address? Thank you.
So I'm happy to be corrected on this by either Nancy or Becky, but my understanding is that because of the security that people perceive will be, especially at this current time with local authorities, we're seeing more people coming to us rather than to the IFAs. That information is contained within the report. I'm not sure which page, but it is there. Which is a good thing. I think currently in the past it was a little bit different. We have actually restructured our offer to our foster carers, both in terms of their allowances and the support they get, and everything really around it. So our package is now very comparable to local IFAs in all ways, shapes and forms. I will defer to Becky if there's anything to add to that. Thank you.
Becky, any reflections?
No, nothing to add, Chair.
Right, thank you. So, colleagues, no other hands, Lisa?
Nobody's
Okay,
indicated.
thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please show.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. We now move on to the LADO report. Councillor Cordelia Law, would you be kind enough to share this with us?
Yeah, it's your lucky evening. You get me again this evening. So, LADO annual report. So LADO stands for the Local Authority Designated Officer, and this is the annual report that provides an overview of allegations referred to the LADO regarding people in a position of trust working or volunteering with children in Torquay. So it summarises the statutory role of the LADO and both the national and regional context of the role, the number of consultations and referrals, and a breakdown of the types of allegation and the profile of the LADO's work from the 1st of April 21 to the 31st of March 2022. The responsibilities of the Local Authority Designated Officer are set out in Working Together to Safeguard Children 2018 and Keeping Children Safe in Education 2021. Torquay's LADO has worked hard to establish links both locally and regionally and also nationally. The LADO regularly engages in peer observation, audits, and attends regular network meetings to contribute to service-led improvements and to strengthen effective cross-boundary working. This report highlights an increase in the number of consultations undertaken and referrals received in the year 2021 to 2022. Torquay Lado undertook 350 consultations in 2021-22, with 53 of these meeting the Lado threshold and progressing to an allegation management meeting. This is in comparison to 157 consultations the previous year, with just 27 progressing. The highest number of referrals in 2021 to 22 was in respect of concerns relating to physical harm, with emotional harm the second highest allegation type and transferable risk the third highest, and this mirrors the highest allegation types of the previous year. Transferable risk through the Lado harm threshold test was introduced in line with statutory guidance in 2020 as the fourth criteria. This relates to those in a position of trust who have behaved or may have behaved in a way that indicates that they may not be suitable to work with children. So a high number of consultations within 2021-22 were made in respect of education staff. I think there were 171 consultations referring to education staff. The report outlines that this is likely due to a combination of challenges faced by the service in terms of COVID-19 recovery and associated staff absence, as well as a change in the Keeping Children Safe in Education guidance in September 2021, which clarified what should constitute a concern in regards to anyone in a position of trust, which may have led to an increase in the reporting of allegations, because the number of allegations went up by over, they more than doubled. There were 197 more consultations with the Lado than there had been the previous year. So 85 of the 350 consultations were in respect of cared for children, and that's an increase from 49 the previous year, and in line with the overall increase. This highlights the vulnerability of our cared for children who remain at higher risk of being victims of abuse and neglect, and reiterates and reinforces the importance of the corporate parenting role and the commitment that we have made to being a council whose members and officers think of firstly of our cared for and the care experienced young people in respect of every decision that we make. In 2021 to 22, I'm going back a bit. In line with the restorative model of practice, the Lado has been proactive in involving children and young people and parents where appropriate in the process, and this has involved him writing personally to 34 children and young people during the year 21-22. 21-22, the Lado offered awareness training to children's services workforce, to Torquay Children's Safeguarding Partnership, residential providers and foster carers, as well as independent fostering agencies, language schools and the VCS organisations, including Torquay Ukrainian Support Group when requested. And you think about it, 350 consultations, 1 year, one person. I would like to put on record here our gratitude and thanks to our Lado who works incredibly hard, Ivan Sullivan. And actually, this has been another area where traditionally we've struggled in Torquay and we've had difficulties, and our Lado perhaps hasn't been performing as it should do, and it was something that was repeatedly mentioned by Ofsted in our monitoring visits. Actually, when we had our last visit from our Ofsted visit, there was praise from our Ofsted inspectors to how well our Lado is working, what it's achieving, and also for the awareness and the training, that the quality of what he's putting out there. So I'd like to put on record our thanks as a cabinet for the work that he does in keeping our children safe. Thank you.
Councillor Cowell, you may wish to second.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And as usual, Councillor Law has given an extremely comprehensive, almost verbatim summary of the report. As Councillor Law states, it's an extremely important role, and it is testimony to our Lado that their work has been recognised within Ofsted. It's clearly an important part of that whole system process to protect children, and I can just echo that whilst this isn't a statutory function, it's certainly one that I understand is an indication of best practice. So again, it's to the credit of the effort that our Lado actually puts into keeping children safe in Torquay. And Councillor Darling just reminded me, in actual fact, that he recently, within the last 12 months, gave a presentation to Sport Torquay, because clearly, sports clubs and organisations are an important element where there's lots of young people, and it's making sure that they have those safeguarding practices in place and they know those processes if they identify any potential threat or risk. So I'm more than happy to support this document. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Becky Thompson, do you have any reflections before we go into any further debate?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to echo, I think, both Councillor Law and Councillor Cowell's reflections on this report. Very much is a reflection, I think, of the hard work of our Lado and the very proactive, flexible and accommodating approach he takes to anyone in a position of trust who needs that advice around safeguarding children. I can take absolutely no credit for this. The credit all goes to our Lado, I think. So a big thank you also to him.
And colleagues, I know that myself and Councillor By at the very least spent time with him at one of our recent practice reviews, and it was extremely enlightening, and really and it was also heartening to hear the passion that Ivan shared around this topic, and so it is heartening, this report. Colleagues, anyone from around the table who may wish to comment?
Councillor Long.
Just for anyone who's tuned in onto the YouTube channel, wondering what a LADO is, it's a local authority designated officer, just in case, as we all seem to have lapsed into council speak, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It's really on a technical issue. I just think when you have graphs like this that only shows 2 years, especially when we've had COVID, you can read too much into it. I mean, if you look at it at page 198, when the consultations referrals by month 2020-21, the green is very high compared to the red. And we've been told, probably COVID and other things, that I think if you only have 2 years, you don't actually, in the fostering, I think it was going back 6-7 years. Here we've only got 2 years. One year was affected by COVID. So I would have liked to have seen, or maybe in the future, if we can have more than 2 years to give a true reflection of what's happening across this area. Thank you.
Thank you. So any other debate at this stage before we put that question from Councillor Lewis? Any other hands? No? Okay. So Councillor Law, would you like to share any thoughts on Councillor Lewis's comments, and then we'll be looking at going to the vote if there's any summating that you wish to do.
Yes, I think it's a little bit simplistic really to say that the year-on-year changes due specifically to COVID. It's about the introductions of a fourth criteria to what they can to what is applicable for it. So that's led to a lot of schools, and that's probably why the education number was so high, because it's led to quite a few schools getting advice rather than it actually being something that needs to be escalated. In terms of whether more years can be handed in, I will pass that on, but I would actually just like to remind that this isn't a statutory document. We produce this to help ourselves and our partners so that we can look at emerging trends and things that come on. I've no idea about more years. I will pass that over.
Thank you, colleagues. So it's been proposed and seconded. All right, sorry. Sorry, Becky.
Thank you, Chair. In respect of the 2 years, we made significant improvements to the way in which those consultation referrals and outcomes were recorded at that 2-year point. So therefore, that is included to ensure that there's absolute accuracy in terms of those outcomes. But I recognise that point, and next year's report should be able to look at a 3-year trend and pattern.
Thank you. So now I'm really saying it's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please show.
Unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. So It's still before 7:30, so we will go to the item on management and leadership training. We've got a series of contracts items now. So, Councillor Carter, if I come to you for this one, please.
Yeah, so as we do not have an in-house training team, we've recently procured through the council procurement process a training package that was able to return the most economically and advantageous tender. I was going to have to stumble over that. The training is for staff in the middle and senior management and leadership positions within the council, and will be jointly funded by Children's Services and Human Resources. As we all know, legislation and working practices change over time, and our management need to be up to date with current changes. Not training the staff could result in poor management practices, which could also lead to employee relation issues such as grievances, absence, disciplinaries and attendance issues, not least employment tribunals, all costing the council time, money and reputation. Training negates these problems, and investing in our staff helps with retention and attracting staff to work for us. So I therefore propose 3.1 that the preferred supplier be awarded a contract for the delivery of leadership and management training from the 5th of September 2022 until the 4th of September 2024, and the contract can be renewed for a further 2 years until September 2026 in 12-month increments.
Thank you. Councillor Law, I understand you wish to second.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to repeat, I'm sure you're all sick of hearing from me this evening. I'm not going to repeat a lot of what Christine has said, but just say that the funding for this training will be jointly funded between Children's Services and Human Resources for staff who hold middle and senior management positions within the Council. This will support our recruitment, retention and our succession planning of our workforce at Torquay Council, and will help to make Torquay Council an employer of choice. And as I said, this also links in because some of the modules within this, I was just looking for my list of modules, but couldn't find them. But there is a module around diversity and equality within this package. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Becky Thompson, do you have any reflections before we go into debate?
Nothing further to add. Thank you, Chair.
Any hands raised, please, for anybody wish to debate who's on the Cabinet, please?
Nobody's indicated.
In the room who may wish to?
Nobody's indicated, Chair.
Okay. So, Councillor Chris Carter, is there any summation that you may wish to make?
I don't think so. There's no questions.
Sorry, we're having a fight over the button. All those in favour, please show.
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. And as it's relatively close to 7:30, I will we'll stop the meeting now for a 10-minute comfort break, and we will resume. What time are we saying we'll resume according to your watch, Lisa? Please. 30:30. So we'll resume at 30:30 properly. Okay. Thank you.
in Part 2 report in the exempt appendix to this submitted report. The contract will be awarded to Torquay Council Services terms and conditions. The contract will be awarded on Torquay Council Services terms and conditions which were published in the invitation to tender documents. So I don't intend actually speaking about the Part 2 element. There's all the cabinet members here already know the financial side of it, so we don't need to discuss that. This is a re-tendering for an existing service. There's been an uplift in the budget to be more realistic due to both the cost of the production of equipment and the fact that there's been a substantial rise in usage. And those of us that have been members of the council for some time have known that this budget has often been exceeded over the years. So I think it's a wise move to do this anyway. And obviously, we are wishing to assist people to stay safely and happily in their own homes, so the access to the necessary equipment is essential. And I did write down, I can speak from personal experience, being currently in receipt of 5 pieces of equipment whilst recovering from my knee operation. And boy, have I been glad of each and every one of them during this period. So to me, it is an absolutely essential service. Service for people in need in the Bay, and there's a lot of us that are over a certain age. The contract is for an initial 3-year term and then a 1+1+1 subsequent terms to be agreed by the involved parties. And as I've said, the financial report is in Appendix 1, which is in Part 2. And basically, that is it. It's as simple as that.
Thank you. Councillor Long, I understand you may wish to second.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to second the hybrid, Councillor Stockman. When she referred to people over a certain age, in her case, of course, it's 21. As a former advisor for Age UK, we used to get calls about accessing disability equipment. I used to advise people very often about their local authority should have this store. So it's something that all local councils have to have. So more than happy to second it. And I'm really pleased to see, with my economic regeneration hat on, that the contract has a social and environmental value part of the contract, which is designed to improve the economic, social and environmental well-being of Torquay and Torquay's residents. And it supports the community and corporate plan. So that floats my boat. A lot of the time I often refer to these clauses in contracts. So that's really good news that there's that aspect to it as well. So more than happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you. So Joe Williams, do you have any reflections before we go into debate as a cabinet?
Just to say that previous conversations about the contract have asked about recycling equipment, and just to confirm, there is a provision in the contract to recycle and return equipment where it's appropriate to do so, just to reassure members about that.
Thank you, Joe. So any colleagues, any hands from around the table, Lisa, who may wish to engage on this side?
Councillor Cow.
Please do come in, Darren.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just delighted to pick up on the point that Councillor Long has highlighted in terms of the social impact, but also what Joe's just confirmed in terms of the environmental benefit of recycling. It's quite often a frustration. I know somebody who's worked in the equipment store at Torquay Hospital in the past. The frustration of the waste of what is perceived to be perfectly good equipment just basically being scrapped. Not only the cost of that, but the ability to be able to recycle and to pass on, even if it's for export to countries in crisis, which is probably the UK at the moment, it's really beneficial. So I'm delighted to hear that clause. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So any other hands from around the table?
Nobody's indicated.
Any virtual hands?
No, Chair.
Okay, colleagues, it's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please show.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. So, colleagues, we now move on to the print contract. Councillor Chris Carter, would you like to share? Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Chair. We have previously agreed this way forward on the print services, and a lot of this report is restricted, so if we try and not stray into the restricted papers, that would be great. Otherwise, we'll have to go into a part 2. We've been cutting down on our printing and postal use. Our printing has had less demand over the years, but especially over the last 3 years due to COVID, which has made us all work in different ways. The cost of the changeover and development will be mainly financed through the future savings from the removal of our current software, which provides services described in the report 1.1, and the in-house printing will be stopping very shortly. We're moving on to give opportunities for other ways of communicating, which will not only help to reduce our carbon footprint, but it will also help us make us a council fit for the future. Obviously, we will still retain the non-digital ways of communicating. It will just be provided in a different way. So therefore, I move to recommendation 3.1 that the preferred supplier be awarded a contract for the delivery of the print service for a fixed 5-year term from the 8th of September 2022 to the 8th of September 2027, with the option to extend for a further 2 years at the end of the fixed term, if required, and as set out in the exempt Appendix 4. So moved.
Thank you. Councillor Cowler, I understand you're happy to second.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, happy to second the recommendation as laid out and introduced by Councillor Carter. Clearly, the costs of running an in-house print service are escalating at a time when in actual fact demand is falling. Technology has moved on, the way in which we use printed material has changed. Most people are using electronic communicational devices, so therefore it's an inevitable consequences of the changing world of technology, and also as I say, spiraling costs of raw materials. You know, paper and ink, for example, don't come cheap anymore. So it is a beneficial benefit to the council, and it actually provides a solution that the 151 officer and myself discussed back in 2019 when I first assumed this current role. So it's taken 2 or 3 years for us to come to the conclusion, but it's the right time as recommended. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we have Matt Fairclough-Kay with us this afternoon, or this evening even. Matt, are there any elements that you want to unpack for us before we go into any debate?
Nothing I need to add, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Well, I just muted myself as always. So, colleagues, any debate from around the table?
Nobody's indicated.
Any virtual hands?
No, Chair.
Okay, it's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please show.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, colleagues. So we now move on to an item which is in respect of a loan for some assets for Swissco. Councillor Darren Cowell, you're presenting this.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, the reason my name's on the top of this report is because of the financial element, even though it is really benefiting the place remit, Councillor Morey's world, but it is to invest in new vehicles. We were talking earlier about the need to invest and to replace the ageing fleet that we have in Swissco that was inherited after the lack of investment in previous years and the latter years of Torquay. So a new fleet will clearly be more reliable, be more efficient, and wherever possible there will be an aim to look to EV purchases rather than combustion engines. The other significant element of this recommendation is the need to install the roof on the transfer station at Yalberton. It's been long overdue, and for those people who have been asking the question whether it is going to be capable of taking solar panels, then my understanding is that the design will be such that solar panels can be added, but it's not included in the initial build because of capacity issues with Western Power, which we're actually seeing in other of our projects for solar generation. So the Each individual element will come as a separate request from Swissco, from Matt Reeks and the board, to the 151 officer, Martin Phillips, to be agreed in conjunction with Councillor Darling and myself. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So, colleagues, I'm happy to second this and will add no more to the debate at this stage. Martin, do you have any reflections?
Not particularly. This gives us the flexibility for Matt and his team to replace the vehicles when it's opportune to do so. So it won't all be spent at once, probably about 3 or 4 years, I would have thought, to do this. But yeah, it gives them the flexibility, so good, thank you.
Yourself before we move into debate.
Nothing to add, thank you, Chairman.
So, Jackie, I understand you wish to come in.
Sorry, Chair, it was just a quick question. It's probably in the report. What's the time scales for the delivery of the vehicles or whatever you're buying?
So the first stage of the project will be to purchase some of the vehicles that we currently spot hire. So in effect, those vehicles will cease to be leased on a Friday afternoon and will become owned on a Monday. That will generate a saving. Then as we work our way through the fleet, lead times are dependent on the type of vehicle. They can be anything up to sort of 100 weeks in worst case scenario.
Okay, colleagues, any other hands, Lisa, from around the table? Of course, this is going to full council as it's significant borrowing that we need to reflect on. So no one else? Any virtual hands, Lisa?
No, Chair.
Okay, so colleagues, it's been proposed and seconding. All those in favour, please show.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. So we now move on to an item which is target setting for us as a local authority. Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Martin. So target setting for us as a local authority. We did have some feedback from the audit committee. There were 4 key areas. This is the area that I would encourage us to debate. Colleagues, this has been circulated in advance of the meeting, so I'm not going to spend our time going through the recommendations. I'd like to formally propose from the chair. Councillor Carroll, would you like to second?
Yes, happy to second, and like you, just as published.
Right, so is there any debate from colleagues from around the table?
Nobody's indicated, Chair.
Any virtual hands?
No, Chair.
Okay, it's been proposed and seconded. Please show.
Unanimous, Chair.
Right, so colleagues, we now have an urgent Chief Executive's decision that's been circulated previously. It's not for debate, it's just a matter of information. And that concludes our meeting. Thank you all very much for your time this evening. Thank you.